I'm a big fan of Margaret Armstrong. She just, from the first time I saw a cover designed by her, I was hooked. So I began collecting myself, and I found my first book in a little shop. I'm always going out junking, as they say. And I found one of her books, A Beautiful Spine, on a shelf, and I grabbed the book and I was perusing the cover and noticed initials on the cover. And I
Right.
was like, what is this? So I had to start doing some research because at that point I really wasn't even a bookseller yet. So doing some research told me that it was Margaret Armstrong and that she was probably the most sought after cover designer of her time. And being a woman made it even more interesting to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rare Book Cafe Coffee Break Edition. I'm Linn with the Rich Books in Calhoun, Georgia. Today, I'm accompanied by my co-host, Richard Mori. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Lee. How are you? And I just so everybody's up to date. This is what the hand now looks like. It since we've covered that subject before.
It looks great. That's amazing.
I'm
That is
feeling
amazing.
and don't anyone tell the doctor, but the golf hand is working okay.
Well, great, because it was really a shame for you to have your winter in Florida and not be able to play.
Well, on worse than that, Lee, I'm on
Yeah.
the 7th tee of the golf course.
Okay. Well, we do what we can.
Yes. So,
And
well, it's good to be with you. You're looking good. And did you notice that the temperatures have started to become a little more comfortable?
yeah, it has been a big improvement here. There was some frost yesterday morning,
Oh,
but I
ouch.
didn't get out in it, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so and Richard, while you're coming to us from Florida right now, I know where are you normally?
Normally, you'll find me, well, actually, I'm
In
not
your
even
van,
sure.
I know that, but
Yeah. Well, I go back to New Hampshire, but then I go to Maine and I go to New York and I
right.
go to Massachusetts and then I go to Pennsylvania. So, pick a spot. I'll
All
be
right,
there.
and we can find you. That's right. And today we are so pleased to have as our guest Sandi Silverman from Unbound Books, Unbound Bookery. Is that
Yes,
right, Sandy?
yes, that's correct.
In Lakeland, Florida, along with Richard and me. She will be exhibiting at our upcoming show, which we try to tease people about a little bit. March the 1st and 2nd, we're all going to be. Where are
Let
we
me
going to
think.
be?
I think it's someplace in Florida. Is it East Coast or West Coast? I think it's West Coast.
Yeah, get it
Am I
right this
getting
time.
I'm near what, Tampa? What's that little town called? It's not very well known. St. Petersburg, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. And this is the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, which has been going on for 40, is that correct? Something years now. And because didn't we celebrate the 40th anniversary of it?
We did, and I
We
think
did.
42 years.
I was going to say
42. Thank you,
42.
Alan. 42 years. And as we all know, it is in St. Petersburg. So we're excited today to hear what wonderful, beautiful things Sandi is bringing, because I know that she has a lovely collection of books by designers and illustrators such as Margaret Armstrong. And so Sandi, what have you got? You may not be packed up yet, but what have you
Well,
got
I'm not packed up yet.
put aside to share with us?
I've brought a few books home with me to share with you today. I'm a big fan of Margaret Armstrong. She just, from the first time I saw a cover designed by her, I was hooked. So I began collecting myself, and I found my first book in a little shop. I'm always going out junking, as they say. And I found one of her books, A Beautiful Spine, on a shelf, and I grabbed the book and I was perusing the cover and noticed initials on the cover. And I
Right.
was like, what is this? So I had to start doing some research because at that point I really wasn't even a bookseller yet. So doing some research told me that it was Margaret Armstrong and that she was probably the most sought after cover designer of her time. And being a woman made it even more interesting to me. So I have a couple of her books I'm going to show you. And Richard, the first year I was at the book fair, told me that I would do myself a favor if I would put Mylar on the covers of these books. So I took your advice, and some of my
God,
had the Mylar.
I got to write that down because I can't remember anybody else who listens to me. So.
I listen to you, and it does make a difference. So it's not so great for photography, but this is The Unknown Quantity. It's by Henry Van Dyke. Margaret did a lot of covers for him, and I don't know that you're going to be able to see the initial.
We can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so that's one of her books that I'm going to be bringing with me. This is another one of her books as well. This one does not have her initial, but by doing research and purchasing books about how to identify different cover artists, I have learned that this book, The Yoke, is also one of hers, even though it does not have her initials. So she didn't always initial the covers, but I think this is a truly lovely book of hers. I have one more of hers, and then I have a couple other types. This does not have her. Oh, does this have her initials? I could have sworn I saw the initials on here yesterday. They're hidden. Okay, so this is Bailu Hill, and her initials on this one are hidden up here in the flowers. So that's part of the fun too for me, is trying to see if I can find any, identification as far as when I find books like that. So those are the three I have of hers today. I do have others with me. I dropped one on the floor. Give me a second.
So, Sandy, while you're picking that up, the first rule and most important rule that every bookseller has to memorize. This is the only rule that has no exceptions.
Okay.
For every rule, there is always an exception.
Okay, there you go.
And rule number 2, if it gets difficult for you, when you get confused, refer to rule number 1.
Oh, there you go. I'll remember that too. So in doing research on Margaret, I started buying the research books, like I said, trying to be able to identify other cover artists. So this is this is a lovely book. There's a little DD. This does not have the Mylar, so you might be able to see that a little bit more clear. And that was decorative designers. So there was a group of artists that did cover art during that same time period, and they didn't use their own initials. They used DD for decorative designers. So I learned that by researching Margaret.
So is that book priced yet?
And Amity Silver Wedding?
Yeah.
It is. Yes, it's $30.
And would you sell it to me?
I would be delighted to sell it to you.
Please hold it for
I'll have my first sale at book fair, and hopefully not the only one.
Right, but I would enjoy having that book. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
And for our viewers who are not familiar with Armstrong, what time period are we talking about here?
I'm saying probably the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Right.
She also, after she stopped cover designing, she went into writing. So she became an author as well. And she also wrote a book. Let me step away for 1 second. I'm going to grab that off my shelf. Give me one.
Well, while you do that, let me just add, do you have the reference book on her?
I do. Would you like to see that?
You should, show and get that. And,
okay.
And I'll talk about it while you.
Okay, I'll go get that.
Okay. So one of the wonderful things about Margaret Armstrong is that she's beautifully designed these books. And the period, as you know, Lee, is just the exciting period in the book trade. It's the golden age of what we call the golden age of the book. And I don't have my copy with me, but I actually have a copy in the van for sale. It's a really very thick volume. And I'm not going to remember the person who designed it or did the book, but it is one of the best reference books you could buy. And And you says you can show us the color illustrations in that book. It's just fantastic.
Okay, so I have the book now.
Okay, show us the color illustrations.
Okay, so this is
Yes,
like the whole thing.
Yep.
So it's the cover treasure, the life and art of Margaret Armstrong. And it lists in here to date, when this book was published, all the covers that are attributed to her. And evidently they're still finding some. So there's a Facebook page related to Margaret Armstrong art. And people will post on there when they find a book and ask for advice. Do you think this might be one of her covers that hasn't been discovered yet? And I guess Lowell Thing, who I've never had the pleasure of meeting, is an expert on her. It's quite a thick book, but it's got fabulous, fabulous information. He goes through year by year and shows the cover of the books year by year. So it's really, this has been a wonderful guide for me. Let's see, let me go back to the beginning of this and see. 1887, it looks like, was when they first attributed covers to her, up through 18, 19, 20, even up into the 1920s, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and then also getting back to her being an author, this is one of the books that she wrote, Western Wildflowers, which is in my personal collection. I won't have that at the book fair because this one's mine. But yeah, so from what I understand, this is what I've heard, whether this is true or not, Richard, you can probably tell me better, that she was one of the first people to go down into the Grand Canyon and identify plants that hadn't been identified before, supposedly. And I think that's what this book is about. It has illustrations, color illustrations, and just.
I've had that book before. It's a wonderful book.
It is a wonderful book.
My treasures.
Well, when I was at the Rare Book School at University of Virginia, a good while ago.
We won't ask what decade. We won't ask what decade, Lee.
We had to do a research project on something, and I did it on Margaret, and that book is just, the reference book is just wonderful,
isn't it? It is,
and that was a time when women writers and illustrators were beginning to have some power in the publishing industry.
Well, you've got Edith Wharton in that period, Deland, I can't think of her name. Margaret Deland. Yeah.
And you've got Dana and Mrs. William, whatever her name is, Dana, who did the other
Alcott.
Did the other wildflower book that came before Margaret Armstrong's Western Wildflowers. Though it was not illustrated by Armstrong, but it was beautifully illustrated.
Yeah.
So, it was an exciting time in the entire publishing industry.
Yes, exactly.
For everybody. But those are so pretty, so pretty. I know a copy of Van Dyck's Out of Doors in the Holy Lands has an especially gorgeous cover with a lot of.
I am bringing that one with me to the fair. I do that one.
So, Sandy, tell us about your store. I went on the website last night. I said to myself, this lady has got quite a fancy little website here.
Well, my space is so tiny. It actually is probably about the size of my office here at home. So kind of a funny story. I started selling books when COVID started. So I was doing it more or less online and running out to people's cars with my mask on and my bag and taking their credit card and sticking in the little machine. And that was at a different location. So I have friends that own a little women's clothing boutique here in town. And it's in a 1920s bungalow building, a little white cottage. So when I knew I wanted to do something other than just be at this other location, I asked them, do you have any space I can rent? And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we do. So the space that I'm in was actually the sun porch of this little cottage. So there's gardens on both sides, and it had built-in bookshelves. So I was like, oh, well, that was just meant to be. So I was fortunate enough to be able to open up my bookshop there. And on the days that I'm not there, like today, they actually help run the bookstore for me.
Well, that's
Oh, that's
wonderful.
good.
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah. So
Oh,
I have some really loyal followers, and for the second year in the row, I have gotten the Best of Florida award, which is quite an accomplishment for a tiny. My
Perfect.
store is so tiny, you wouldn't even believe how tiny it is. It looks bigger in the pictures than it actually is. And speaking of the book fair, along with that, I always take photos and I post everything on Google. So I've had people actually come into the shop and they look around and they go, this isn't anything like I thought it was going to be. Well, they're looking at pictures of the Coliseum, thinking,
Yeah.
and I want to say, when you walked into this little tiny cottage, did you really think you were going to see a room that big? This isn't Harry Potter, okay?
yeah. Well, I was asking Alan and Richard last night if I remembered correctly that you had a bird cage, and I
Yeah,
understand it was a bird house, not a
a
bird
little
cage,
house. Yes,
in your booth
yes.
at St. Pete several years ago. That was so pretty and was just uh, everything in your booth was not quite what you expected, which was
That's,
good.
that's my aim, is to try
Yeah,
to be different and make people want to stop and look and get out of their comfort zone. So I
Yep.
try to design my booth and my shop to make people at least want to take a look to see
yeah,
what's there instead of just lining up books on a shelf. I'd like to try to create like a little, I don't know, something of interest. And I'll be bringing my birdhouse again this year too.
well, good, good. We'll
So
look forward to seeing it. Besides Margaret Armstrong, what are you bringing?
I'm
Anything?
bringing. I do have a collection, so you know, getting to these books. So these are Harrison Fisher, who's famous for his Harrison Fisher women, but he
Right.
also did gentlemen as well. So I have gotten a collection of these that I'll be bringing, several books that are Harrison Fisher illustrated editions. I actually acquired these. People always ask me also, as I'm sure they do you all, where do you get your books? So
Mhm.
a friend who's also a bookseller saw a post on Marketplace about a year ago and said, Sandy, this is right up your alley. Well, this woman had inherited a warehouse that had belonged to her father, who was a bookseller. And she had boxes and boxes of these books. So in order to
Oh,
get them, I
goodness.
had to buy all of them, which was fine with me. I bought all of them. So that's how I acquired all these Harrison Fisher, was from this other woman who she had no interest in having her father's books, which is
Wow.
always amazing to me. I get a lot of books from people that inherit books and they just would rather have the money. And I'd rather have the book. So it works out
Yeah.
really
All right.
Sounds like
Fine.
your good fortune.
it is my good fortune, exactly. And then
Well,
this is another one.
what I'm finding right now is I have a lot of friends my age
Yeah,
whose kids don't want their accumulated stuff.
yeah,
And sometimes that works out really well. You find some interesting things. Sometimes it's just
yeah.
stuff that you don't want either.
Exactly.
But sometimes you can look up on some things. I had a call a couple of years ago from some folks up in Signal Mountain, Tennessee, who had things that belonged to their grandfather that turned
Oh,
out to be a real treasure trove for me,
yeah,
that
yeah.
they didn't want. But you don't ever know. And of course, also in that time period, you've got books illustrated by Christie,
Uh-huh.
and I think some that had Margaret Armstrong covers
Yes, yes.
had Christie illustrations as well.
Well,
Um,
since you brought up Christie, I'm going to bring up Maxfield Parrish.
well,
Okay.
please do.
So I
Love
was in
Maxwell Parrish.
I was in Sarasota this weekend, and I
Yeah,
had the good fortune, as I sometimes do, of picking up. This is a letter, 2-page,
yeah.
in his hand, and
Oh my
it's signed in what I refer to as the intimate, which is his initials,
God.
MP, and it is written to a
Oh,
woman by the name of Linn, who happens to be his daughter-in-law.
oh my
Oh,
goodness. Wow. So where did
So
you find that?
at Sarasota at the antique show this past
Okay.
weekend,
Okay.
and of course I'm a real good fan of Parrish. He's from New Hampshire.
Oh,
All the greats are from New
and New
Hampshire.
Hampshire is a hotbed of writers.
Did I don't think I've ever said that before, but
Yeah.
well, you said it now. So
but it So it fits very nicely with my Edith Wharton book, illustrated by Maxwell Parrish, Italian Gardens,
Nice.
which has a check of Maxwell Parrish in his hand,
my
included in the book.
Oh my gosh, what a
So,
treasure.
yeah, so it's all this is all connected in that same golden age period. It's just a wonderful, wonderful time.
Yes, I agree. I have another, I'll show you one more, and then I have another reference book I wanted to share because I've learned a lot from the second book too. This is another Harrison Fisher, and actually you can't see in the camera, but it's purple, and I have a thing for purple books. I don't know what it is about books covered in purple, but there's something about it. But this is another Harrison Fisher, which is really lovely.
You're not alone about the purple. I have
I'm not?
customers. No, I have customers that's all they want is purple books.
Just purple. Who would have thought that books weren't just all covered in brown?
Yeah.
This is the art of American book covers from 1875 to 1930. And just the cover of this book is amazing. I'm trying to find who the author is. And I think this gentleman actually, it's Richard Minsky so this is the other.
Great. Oh, that's a wonderful book.
It's a beautiful book.
He's done several actually.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. But when I try to find the others, I can't find those as easily as I found this one. So,
they're small print runs.
Yeah. I guess maybe people are keeping those at this point, but so and I'll be bringing some more modern books that have interesting covers and things like that. Some Eastern Press, some other antique books that might. So when I sent photos over, I sent a photo of an Egyptian book. I have a set of 2 books, Egyptian history, and they are enormous. They are huge and thick. So I did not bring those home with me because I don't want to have to haul them twice. So I'm going to leave them at the shop until I load up for the shop, but I'll be bringing those with me as well. So I'll be bringing some other antique books as well as the things that I've shown you here today. So I'm very excited. I'm going to have my own booth this year for the first time. So I've been,
So tell us, what are the hours at the store and what days are you there specifically?
I try to be there almost every day. The store is open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, except Sunday. We're closed on Sunday. I'm always there on Saturday. Generally every day from 10 to at least 2, because I have 2 puppies that are now sequestered to the back porch because they bark all the time, but they're on the back porch right now, so they wouldn't disturb us. But I keep them crated while I'm not here, and I feel guilty after about 4 or 5 hours, so I have to come home and take my puppies out. So
and they don't get to come to the store with you.
They don't come to the store with me. No. One is very nervous.
And the location in Lakeland is?
It's 1026 South Florida Avenue, which is in the Dixieland Historic District. So my shop is a little hard because it's a historic district designation, you can't put any more signs out by the road. They will not let you put any more big signs. You're out of luck. So I have a sign on the parking fence and a little drop down sign in the front yard of the bungalow. So the big signs out by the street are going to tell you you're at the Bungalow Boutique, but inside of that is where I'm located.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Remind everybody where we will be. We will be at the Coliseum in St. Petersburg, March 1st and 2nd, from 10 to 5 on Saturday and 10 to 4 on Sunday. And so if you're in the area, please come see us. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Or, Facebook or Instagram or YouTube.
We're every place where good books are. We're every place where good books are found.
We are all over, and I want to remind everybody that we are concentrating right now on the Florida Book Fair. But once that is over, we will be having guests from all over the bibliopolis that we call it, the whole range of book lovers, and we are sponsored by the Florida Book Fair. So thank you so much for being with us, Sandy, and
very much for having me. I enjoyed it.
See you again soon.
Okay, bye. We're going to see you again soon, Lee.
Yes, very soon, I'm afraid.
Nice to see you again, Sandy.
Nice to see you too, Richard. We'll see you in March.